Good afternoon. This is Critical Talk with Professor Amina Al-Din, and we're seen live on YouTube and Facebook and Galaxy 19 and a couple of other places. But in my thoughts, and in looking back over the shows that we've done, one critical area that we had not touched upon as much as we should have, but we were all thinking about it, was the next generation. And maybe it's two generations from me, who knows? But to think about how our young people who are just really entering careers or grad school or even undergrad, thinking about what is going to be their future in the midst of Trump, in the midst of COVID-19, in the midst of protests, Black Lives Matter, all of these things that are happening that are turning society on its end. So toward that thought, I invited my colleague host who does the program Next Gen for Muslim Network TV. Amina Ahmed is a young, dynamic activist, and she is indeed dynamic, talk show host with us, and a public speaker. She is the co-founder of Artist Residence in home of Shaheen Beg, and I'll ask her to talk about that campaign. She is the youth leader of the nonprofit organization Indian American Muslim Council. She speaks at press conferences on topics regarding social justice and solidarity, and has coordinated and facilitated town hall meetings on the conversation of identity and race diversity. Welcome, Amina. Also with us, I asked my producer, Connor Mays, to come on also because he is the next gen. And after trying to put up some resistance, we got him to join us. Connor went to school and majored in geography, studying in Germany, and did his thesis on the Bosnian genocide, which brought him to one of our other programs, And Justice for All. So welcome both of you. And I think we can have a very lively conversation where I'm going to do more listening than talking because I really, I'll pose the topic and I want you guys to just, and ladies to just weigh in. Now, one of the things that has come up increasingly is we have a president who is a little bit out of sorts in more ways than one. Don't make faces. In more ways than one. But what does that say about what he already in 3.5 years has turned our country into? How do you see your future? Because the things he's done, even if we get a new administration, the things he's done won't go away. How do you see your future, Amina?
First of all, assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I love that both of our names are Amina as well. That's amazing. And thank you, Connor. I'm sorry for putting you on the spot there, but I'm glad you're here with us as well. I think in terms of what our future looks like, it definitely is uncertain. With this whole presidency, we've seen that uncertainty being a theme, and we really don't know where they're headed. And even though, even if we do get Democrats in office, still the damage has been done. But I think looking forward, we have to ensure that we don't have 4 years more of this damage, right? We have to understand what has happened, and it's continuing to happen, but we have a chance at getting some people who have similar thinking as us in office, so we can't miss that chance. And I think looking forward, and I know Connor's nodding along, as young people, we have to go out and vote to make sure that we don't repeat this.
Connor?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me on the other side of the camera this time. It's fun to
Yeah,
have a little role reversal. I
yeah.
hope I don't always need to go or speak after my colleague Amina Ahmed, because I don't know if I can always follow her answers to her high qualities. But I think that right now we are in this moment, and I know we're all tired of hearing this at this point about how critical this particular moment is for this upcoming election and what this means for our generation and future generations because of the long-lasting impacts. 4 years ago, we could use the excuse, "Oh, we didn't know, exactly what the damage could have been. We didn't. We've never had the experience of having a non-politician be in the office, and but that excuse no longer works. We are no longer able to have that sort of ignorance of what the potential of another 4 years is going to be, especially seeing this past year. And we can talk for, I'm sure, the entire hour about just the response to COVID-19, but that is simply one of a litany of failings that have happened, and we can no longer use that excuse of, oh, we wanted to try something different. Well, we tried it, and it's clearly not working.
Right. So when you think about this future, let's go to education, for example. He is forcing schools to open their doors. He's gotten parents you pulling on their heartstrings, but also pulling on their purses and their own emotional stuff to protest to get schools to open doors. Now we know that some schools will do okay, depending upon how they segregate students, if they're really prepared. But students, as young people, and as you as young people know, you all like to flock. It's no fun being at school if your closest person is 6 feet away. You want to play. You want to, I don't know, share answers to the test, whatever. But how is all of this going to work? Colleges are experiencing some of it, but in some college majors, even like Connor's thing with geography, others who are doing social work, people doing journalism and communication. How is all of that going to work in a new atmosphere where our president, even though he's been caught on tape, saying that he knew it was coming, but he didn't want, and I'll put the adjective for, he didn't want the market to panic. He didn't care about the rest of the country. How is that going to work out? Do you see people changing their majors? Are they going to look at new, I don't know, kind of putting things together with STEM's program? Are we gonna see a march of people toward digital stuff and media, digital media, and other kinds of computing?
I think that if we see any change in the trajectory of people's goals and career aspirations, I think it'll actually be less from the president's impact and more because of the overall social climate that we find. Obviously, Trump has exacerbated that, but I think that it takes a lot more than just his example to really divert an entire generation of people in what they're studying, what they want to do with their lives, things like that. I think it takes the entire wave of social change that we have been seeing in the past couple of months, and I think that is a little bit more telling of what we need or where we're going to be going, instead of just Trump doing what he's doing, because I think that while we always talk about how much it's affecting us and our global reputation. You can talk about all that kind of stuff, but it's the minutia of that social change that everyone feels. It's much more relatable, that I think is going to have a much bigger impact. Amina, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, but like right now, in my town, we had protests to open back schools, and I think that's just very telling of the type of place that I live in. But people, I don't think students, right, the younger generation want to open schools. I think it is their parents, people from that think a certain way, that a lot of the people in my town don't even believe that kids should have to wear masks in school and things like that. And my little sister, she's back at school, and they're not social distancing. Let's just be honest. I saw her the other day. She was standing right next to her friend, and I told her, what happened? And she's like, no, I just want to like be around my friends and things like that. So I think it's in all of our best interest to not open schools and to continue this kind of at least hybrid thing that's going on, where students are at home and doing most of their work from there. And I hope that continues. From the looks of it, I don't think it will.
It's interesting because I wouldn't have this experience if it weren't for the past couple of months, but I've had the pleasure and privilege of living with some people who themselves are teachers and have been teachers for years now, and they're talking about the struggles of going from their daily routine and their entire careers being focused on in-person learning,
right,
to then adapting to this rapidly changing hybrid model or virtual model, whichever that their district decides on. And it's difficult because there are so many changes that are being expected of them to just immediately learn, and it's so difficult to change the way they've been working and doing their jobs for the past however many years, into just trying to do something over the past summer. And every week they had new information. Every week the district's plans changed.
Right.
And there's, you can't really blame the teachers for being as stressed and as kind of scattered as they are right now, even if that's not necessarily something that the students and the children who are looking up to them for this kind of education can really deal with. So it's unfortunately just a perfect storm that I'm not sure what the solution is, but it's something that we need to all work together and have a unified message on how we can address this.
We're going to take a quick break. I want you to keep that in mind, and I want you to think about how the social unrest is changing we know it's changing the environment, but how do you think it's changing how young people your age, but also like Amina mentioned her younger sister, how they interact? Is it leading to more interactions, fewer, or hostile interactions? We'll be back in a minute or so.
Billboards are popping up all over the country with an...
Our neighbors don't realize that Muslims are absolutely opposed to ISIS.
Salam. My name is Abdul Malik Mujahid. I'm an imam in Chicago.
16 shots! No me! No justice! No me!
So how do we bring up the energy which can really have an impact on the world? You need to build bridges of understanding among people, and we need to have America moving forward.
That lesson learned has brought the strength of humanity to America, which is the diversity.
Mujahid Talks, only on Muslim Network TV. Faithfully connected.
So, Amina, starting with you, you mentioned your little sister, but your little sister and you, do you think the social unrest is driving the need, perhaps just on the unconscious mind, for people to need to be together to paint a different picture than the hostilities and stuff going on.
Definitely. I think as a young activist, there is this kind of mindset that has really shifted in young people that I'm seeing currently. And it's honestly very beautiful. It's powerful. It's revolutionary. And I think we're at the beginning of something extremely powerful. And a lot of people mark it as the beginning of perhaps another revolution. And, you know, I don't doubt that. And I've seen the young people around me, especially young people who have always been active, kind of raise their voices, as well as people of color and others amplify the voices of those on the front lines and continue to do that. So it's just been an amazing experience, especially with the unrest, seeing the solidarity that is going on and people working together and really just coming together in all forms. And all of that has been online, right? Through these Zoom meetings, through webinars, through shows like this as well, where people are communicating. And it's different, but I think that has allowed people from different parts of the world to connect.
Connor, are you calling everybody you know just to make sure that you're connected?
There has absolutely been a change in at least even what I can see in just my own personal circle of friends. During the height of the COVID pandemic in New York City, where I was living at the time, it was a pretty scary experience where there were thousands of people getting sick and dying every single day. You turn on the news and someone in your very own city, healthcare workers were describing it. I'm not kidding. This is their quote, was that it was like experiencing 9/11 every single day.
Right.
And so we have that going on. And then immediately afterwards, we have the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement in the city, which was this unifying call that everyone wanted to go out and support, myself included, but you are still in that mindset of, oh, I need to not be around people because of COVID.
Right.
And it was this strange cognitive dissonance about, which is it that you are, that is more in your head. For some people, it was COVID. For some people, it was Black Lives Matter. And I think it really shows, and I'm not trying to say anything about, if you choose not to go to the protests, you don't support the movement or anything. I'm not saying that at all, of course, because there are some people who need to, look out for their health and things like that. But it did create this sense of unease to me and my friends, who were all normally fairly independent people, who are comfortable doing our own thing and get together when we're able to. But this time, when we were all apart and not quite sure what the next day is going to bring, we, who are normally very introverted people and don't talk that much, suddenly began a weekly call in which we would just get online together and just play games, talk about things, do something to make each other laugh.
Yeah.
And I know perhaps my group of friends is a little different, that we weren't already doing that, but the fact that we did start it is pretty telling as to what the those first couple of months were like.
Well, I know inside, one of the things that has come up repeatedly, well, two things. One, Muslims were still not quite seated with what all of the talk about COVID-19 meant. Many were resistant. Some actually believed that it was going to be gone in, a couple of weeks and we'll be over this and we'll move on. And then they looked up and Ramadan came. And then it became, oh my goodness, what do we do? Houses of worship have shut down. Many women said, oh, thank God, we're going to have a khutbah online. I can finally hear one, without the chatter of other women and their children and get in the back of behind the screen. What did the young women think?
I think for Muslims, especially young Muslims, the masjid, the mosque is a place that you go to kind of feel peace, to feel rejuvenated and energetic, and meet your friends, right? Meet people that you can worship with, and that you can just have a comfortable, safe space with. And because of COVID-19, that was just completely removed. And a lot of people who go to the mosque to feel these type of spiritual connections, right? My grandfather, he goes to the mosque 5 times a day. He's retired, and that's kind of one of the only times that he goes out, and that was completely removed as well. So from the elder generation to the younger generation, it was just completely hard at first, but I think we did get used to it. These online khutbahs started to become our new normal, and we had these sort of seminars with other young people as well, other young women, where we spoke on issues that are relevant to us. So I think it allowed us to kind of control our own space in a way, but it was difficult. I'm not going to deny that whatsoever.
Okay, well, Connor, being in a different crowd, whether you went to bars or you went to Starbucks with your computer in tow to get some coffee or some tea, that closed too. Another kind of temple of congregation, so to speak.
Yes, absolutely. There were I don't want to sound like a broken record and be cliche like everyone else, and all of our lives were upended and we weren't able to do our normal tasks, because of course this is something that everyone has experienced to greater or lesser degrees. But what I think was the most telling for me was not necessarily the fact that things were shutting down. It was people's reactions to things shutting down. Yes, there were. I'm going to
ask you to check your video because you're fading on me.
All right, on the next commercial break, I'll move to another room.
Okay,
but
well, go ahead. Go ahead, finish what you were saying.
So there were some people, as you were just describing, who were very disheartened by the lack of ability to go out and congregate, to wherever that may have been. There are some people who accepted it and said, okay, this is for the greater good. This is something that we need to do so that not only that we and our neighbors stay safe, but that's so that this all goes away. And then, of course, as we saw on the news, there were plenty of people who didn't feel that way. And I think that was almost had more of an effect on me than the actual places closing, because we all know that eventually things will reopen, and most of what we were doing wasn't essential to our lives. I certainly do like to go.
Habitually, I mean, my heartbreak was Starbucks. I'm used to going to get my coffee, so I set my day, after the morning prayer, I go back to sleep. But then I get up and go get my coffee, and I'm ready, There was no Starbucks. I had to make my own coffee. Not the same.
Yeah.
No, and sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, it's just, was interesting to me to, I learned a lot about myself, because it was not necessarily the fact that I couldn't go out to have coffee. I couldn't go do that. It was the fact that we just didn't know how long it would be, or how long this would go on for. Living in New York, the first thing that we heard was that there would be a shutdown for 8 weeks. 8 weeks sounds like for the rest of your life when you're used to going out all the time.
Yeah.
But then 8 weeks comes and goes, and they say, oh, we're going to have to extend it for another month. And at that point, you just kind of think, as time stops having any meaning. You wake up, you don't go anywhere. You just, you wake up in your apartment, you work in your apartment, you eat dinner in your apartment. That's just all all of a sudden. And suddenly, the week blurs with the weekend.
Yes.
And it sometimes you would just kind of get into that mentality where you're just thinking like, hey, you just got to keep on going on and just do what you can. There are other days where you think, I'm going to claw my way out of my apartment door.
Yeah.
And so you learn a lot about yourself. Sometimes you think, oh, if something happens, I'll be weather it.
But I'm going to take a break right now so that
you're asked to stay inside for it.
I'm going to take a break now so that Connor can switch rooms and we can come back. And I want to continue that thought, because the thoughts of the younger generation, for me, the retired person, it was the same old, same old. I wasn't getting up to go anywhere anyway. But for younger people who are used to going, who have meetings, that's important. And I want to get your thoughts on what you thought during the protest. You gave me some of it. I want to come back to it, but let's take a break for a couple of minutes, give you a chance to change your space. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
I love Adam's World because it makes me learn in a fun way. That Adam has a green face and orange hair. I like this song. I like how Adam sings. I like Adam's World because it makes me happy. What? No. And here's Adam and here's Anissa. Adam is and his sister. Adam is a boy and he is really smart.
Download the new Adam's World app at adamsworldapp.com and let's help tomorrow's Muslims today.
So when we talk about being forced to live with yourself, even though there may be other people in the house, you get forced into some introspection, I would think, in one way or the other. When we looked out the door for the Muslims, Ramadan ended, the Eid that many American Muslims have turned into Christmas came and went. And they looked up, they said you could stick your toe out the front door. And if you stuck your toe out the front door, there was a protest. There were protests everywhere. And then they spread around the world. In the Muslim community, many decided that Muslims don't participate in protests. They are pacifists. The young people said, I don't know about that. And you could see Muslim women and young men everywhere. And then, even though the title was Black Lives Matter, young white men and women were everywhere. And I think it shocked some of the young Black men and women until they remembered, well, wait a minute, we have different relationships with each other than perhaps our parents even did. So talk to me about it. That was great for my eyes,
I think that, at the beginning when a lot of Muslims decided that they were pacifists, it was really ironic because those are the same people that are there at the Palestine protests, that are there at the Kashmir protests. And these are some of my friends and classmates who I protest with and all of these other Muslim-related issues. But when it came to Black Lives Matter, which it can also be a Muslim issue because we have to realize that there are Black Muslims, they were silent. And it was just heartbreaking to see that. But I think that as the protest kind of went on, we had people, people of color, white people, Muslims, all of these people kind of come together once they saw the kind of just how large these protests were and how impactful they were as well. And the fact that they were just demanding justice and nothing more than that. And I think as Muslims, we came to realize that that is part of our faith as well, to demand justice. So I think right now, at the moment, we are seeing many Muslims protest, you know, and amplify the voices of Black protesters as well.
But it's the young ones.
I think the young ones are as well, but many of the young ones, one thing I've seen is that they are not allowed to kind of go out and protest because of the COVID pandemic. They might have, you know, some grandparents, elderly grandparents at home. Their parents are the ones that are a bit afraid to send them out to protest, but they are doing some work. I've had friends that are writing articles, that are doing things in their own medium to raise awareness. And one thing we have to be careful, I feel like, as young people, is we take to performative activism quite often, right? Just raising awareness on social media, making a lot of noise just on social media, but not taking a lot of our work outside of that. And we have to make sure that it's good to be active on social media. It's good to tweet and all of that, and, you know, go off on a bit of a rant sometimes if you feel like you have to. But the work is on the ground level as well, and make sure they're connected at that front too.
Connor?
It's been a very interesting time for me to, you know, figure out exactly what it is that, you know, my role in all of this should be. Because I feel that, you know, I need, or me, or people like me who the protests are not necessarily for. It does not necessarily mean that we don't have a place there or anything like that, but it's just we need to make sure that our, you know, what we're saying and what we're doing is right and proper to support what's going on. And so there are those times where, you know, even in just your own subtle way, even if you're not necessarily the face that should be at the, you know, forefront of a protest or leading, you know, some kind of thing within your city, you can still do what you can to help support and amplify the voices that should be at the front of these movements. And that's been a really interesting, time for me, you know, figuring out exactly how it is that I can do that and what an appropriate response could be, because I'm not terribly politically active, to be entirely honest. I don't usually get involved with all of these kinds of things, but upon seeing the past couple of months, you know, how can you not?
Yeah.
So even this has called someone like me to begin getting involved. But it's been not necessarily a challenge, but I have need to really try to be aware of who I am, what my what it is that I should be adding to the conversation. And usually I have found that my place is use whatever platform I have to amplify and support the voices that need to be heard right now.
Yeah.
So when we talk about one of the issues that has been raised is the systemic and institutionalized racism. And I think if I were slightly younger, I would ask both of you, how could you not see it? Or did you see it and ignore it? Or did you really just not see it?
I think that a lot of young people are starting to wake up, right, and get out of their bubble. But I think many people that live in towns, that live in places that are, the majority is white, the majority might be conservative and things like that, they just might have their eyes close to it. Maybe they see it on television, unless all that goes in their house is Fox News. That's another issue as well. But you really do have to be blind. You really have to try to not see it in order to realize that it's, in order to not realize that it's an issue. And Connor was saying that he's not very active, politically active and things like that. But I'm so glad that this whole issue and this whole scenario and the environment that we're living in has allowed so many people to actually get active and play the role of an ally. And someone was telling me the other day that, silence is violence at this point in history, at this point. So it's just so important that we continue to raise our voices. And a lot of young people, I think, are, right, compared to before.
Well, I think Connor is misleading his other self, because you don't go to Germany, write a thesis on Bosnian genocide, and then find justice for all, and then claim I'm not politically active. If that meant getting up off his duff and physically going somewhere. That's one way of being politically active. But the other political activism comes out in the choices that we make, in our perhaps not being willing to march for 4 hours, but doing theses on Bosnian genocide, and finding some place called Injustice for All, somewhere where I can continue where my thoughts are. So kind of I would contradict you. And
that's
No,
that's a good point. And I think it's I think that might be a product of and this is a whole other issue that I don't necessarily want to get into, but that of social media and how it's difficult to say that you are one thing unless you have, pictures or videos to back it up. It's, you see people saying that they are politically active and they accompany it with a picture of them, with a megaphone in front of a crowd and stuff like that. So it is. So I thank you for having me, for grouping me in with a lot of other people who I genuinely do think are doing good work. But I just need to stop and reflect, and I feel like that this whole time has been an era of self-reflection for me, whether it's COVID or Black Lives Matter or things like that, because these environments that Amna described was one that I really grew up in. It was a largely white suburban neighborhood in which a lot of the issues that have been boiling under the surface that weren't making national news, weren't really thought about. And so I did my best when I, first learned that, okay, my little slice of life is not what all of life is, of course. When I learned that, the most you can do is, in my experience, stop talking and listen to the other person. And so when I went abroad, when I went to college, when I started doing a little bit more community work in New York City, one of the most diverse places on earth, I would just try to let the other person talk and inform me about their experiences, because that's the best I can do. I don't have any other perspective besides my own. And so the best I can do is to try to learn a little bit from others and grow from that.
But that is what college, especially liberal arts colleges, are supposed to do. But many go to college, especially in the Muslim community. They don't learn anything about anybody else. They go, they hang out with people who look like them, that are of their same ethnic group, and they pass through and learn zero. True, Amina?
Yeah, and I'm going to be applying to colleges pretty soon, and I want to do law and pursue law as a career. But a lot of the advice that I've gotten is, just you seem pretty smart, go into medicine. And I know that's coming from a very good place, but a lot of the people in our community do pursue, computer science and medicine and engineering, and it kind of just ends there. And that's an issue that we really need to reflect on as a community, that we need to push our kids to go into other fields that they might be passionate about and not just limit them, because we always complain about not having enough representation. But when our children actually want to go out into these fields, we don't allow them to.
Well, it's like that young lady that I saw you interviewing that was getting a degree, and then she was pursuing master's in public health. She had her undergraduate degree was in journalism, but she took the journalism into the public health field, which is where you're also needed too. And I think a lot of college is about finding oneself. It's also about finding one's passion. And then you all have so many things to choose from. My God, if I had that many things to choose from, I probably would have just sat down and tried to figure, like, oh my God, it's too much. But
yeah, that's currently my situation right now. So
but the other advantage you have is you can mix and match things. They're using STEMs in education. People use digital media in medicine. You know, there's so many wonderful combinations of stuff that one can put forth that were never before an opportunity for the rest of us. You know, it was you majored in science or humanities and social sciences, case closed. You know, and there wasn't a lot of time between. But when we think about the future, one of the things that the Trump administration, and I'm just saying it's not Donald Trump just by himself, has put forth is an atmosphere of hostility, racial bigotry, name calling, I think pulling on people's fears. What does that bode for the future? Vigilantism? Because those things are not going to just automatically go away. How do we write a better future?
Yeah. And, you know, let's be honest with ourselves. It's the current administration. If we look into kind of the candidate that we have in the Democratic Party as well, we see some of that in the Democratic Party too, right? We claim to be diverse and accepting of all people.
And we're not.
You know, but the reality is we have a lot of work to do. So even, you know, we should, I believe, support Joe Biden and that. But once they get into office, there's still so much work that needs to be done. When we look at Kamala Harris's history, I think enough is said, right? Just by saying just that, right? But we have to ensure that once Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, hopefully when they do get into office, that we're able to present our policies to them in a way that they are accepting of us and all of these different communities that they claim to represent and empower. So we just have to be on top of our game with the Democratic Party as well. So I know that is me shifting a little bit from the current administration and looking a bit forward, but I think we as Democrats need to highlight that issue.
You got to change that Senate.
Yeah.
With that, leaving the Senate, you did. Doesn't matter who is there. Connor, comments?
I think that it's important to remember that, as you said, it's not just necessarily Trump or his administration, but it is both the system and the national environment that allowed him to become elected. It's not just Trump or his cronies doing something. It is the fact that there were enough people who saw something in that to get elected. It is, and it was really eye-opening to see, wow, so many people are okay with this kind of name calling, with this kind of bigotry and misogyny being the national example of the highest office like that. It's disturbing, to be honest. And so I think you need to remember that once Trump leaves office, those same people are still going to be here.
Exactly.
And I feel bad pointing out a problem without offering a solution at the same time.
Right.
But it's just, that's something that I think that we are going to need to remember, is that there is still that huge division. And I think this goes back to what I was saying earlier about students, choosing different majors and things like that. It's not necessarily Trump that's going to make them do that. It's the entire social atmosphere. So that is something that I think is going to need to change to make sure we don't have another Trump, or that we can diminish the effects of his administration. Because like I said, his base is still going to be there. His supporters are still going to be vocal. And so in order for us to start getting at that root problem, it is going to need to be an entire nationwide social change.
Okay, let me take one more minute to give Connor another minute to fix his video for our last few minutes on air. This is great. We're going to have to do this again, guys. All right. Take a minute.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, it's your brother Zain Bika from South Africa. One of the first educational programs ever produced for Muslim children was the ever popular Adam's World series. The colorful and comical Muslim puppets stole the heart of a generation. Sound Vision will be releasing brand new episodes of Adam's World with the launch of a Adam's World app. Subscribers will enjoy new Adam's World episodes as they are released, as well as all the classic episodes of Adam's World. So visit adamsworldapp.com now to learn more, subscribe, and enjoy new adventures of Adam and his friends. And let's keep helping tomorrow's Muslims today. Assalamu alaikum.
Adam's World. Believe me, there's a lot to see. Bismillah. Let's explore.
It didn't work. It must be the particles from the fires on the West Coast. Because you're still on the West Coast, right?
Oh yeah. I left New York City during COVID just to come here, where suddenly the air is just as deadly.
Oh my goodness! You're not near a fire, right?
I'm in the state of Washington right now, where they're not quite as bad, but the sky yesterday was yellow, so.
Oh my goodness!
So that is scary in its own right, and that's the state of the environment and climate. That's a whole other episode, I think.
Right.
Well, we have a guest room, Connor, and we are not in New York, and we're not on the West Coast. You're welcome anytime.
I appreciate it.
Young people are notoriously, I was myself at UL's ages, history adverse, meaning that we don't look back in history to see what we can learn from it to move forward. We always want to reinvent the wheel. Do you think that's I see some of that happening now in things not being defined, like defund the police, when you're really talking about taking some monies and redistributing them to other departments which could help the populations you claim to serve a little better. But if you just leave defund the police out there hanging, it causes some of the police backlash. They're more likely to kill more people.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
With young people, I think that sometimes we do, we're passionate. Let's just, that's there. But sometimes we're not very used to, or we're not ready to hear the guidance of the elders. And that's the only thing that's going to actually cause change, right? The guidance of the elders, the passion of the youth combined, that is beautiful. That is powerful. But at the end of the day, young people, we are just young people. But a lot of people with the Black Lives Matter movement have been looking at the past, have been looking at the Black liberation movements and the civil rights movement to gain inspiration and realize what it is that they're truly fighting for, with the likes of Malcolm X and even now with Imam Jamil, formerly known as H. Rap Brown. We have so many young people gathered together to fight for his freedom and to fight for justice for someone that fought 20 years ago, for 2 decades ago. So I think that we do need to listen a little bit more. So if you're a young person watching, I would give you that advice, and take it myself first and foremost, that we have to be accepting of the guidance of those who have been in this work far longer than us.
Connor, last word.
I agree that young people are passionate, but I fear that sometimes we and all people can be myopic, and that we are not necessarily looking at the grand scope of things. Sometimes, even if we think we're doing great at looking at all facets of society and all levels, be it class or race, gender, things like that, we think that we're looking at everything, but then we're looking at history. We're not looking at past trends and things like that. And it's almost impossible to look at every single side of it and to look at all the moving parts. But I think just like how we have to remember, the bigger issue besides just the Trump presidency or his administration, I think we also need to look at, take a step back, look at the big trends that we're seeing, whether it's this, current social change that we, may become a revolution. We need to look at past social changes and revolutions to see what happened there. And we need to look at those large-scale trends to have some idea about where we're hurdling, because we're hurdling there fast. We just don't quite know where we're going yet. And I think we need to be able to have a little bit more clarity in steering this to make sure that we're going in the right place. I think we have potential. I think we have a lot of potential to go to the right place, but we just got to make sure we get there.
Amina and Connor, it has been a pleasure. Hopefully, both of you will join me again in the near future, especially since we only have, 49, 48 more days to go. And I'm sure that lots of stuff will occur between now and then. So I hope both of you agree to join me again. And this has been wonderful because you all have a slightly different way of viewing stuff. And it's so important that the 2 points of view come together. So I want to thank you again. This is Professor Amina Al-Din on Critical Talk. Please watch us on Muslim Network TV, on YouTube, and I hope to see you again soon. Assalamu alaikum and bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.